With just 2 cinematic trailers revealed so far, we've only gotten a glimpse of Far Cry 6. But if you know where to look, you can find some really interesting and revealing details when it comes to gameplay and how Ubisoft is telling the next Far Cry story. And I'm going to cover both in this video. Not the obvious stuff, but details you may not learn just by watching the trailers. So if you're curious about Ubisoft's next over-the-top, open-world, first-person shooter, then I hope you'll join me as I look at 10 intriguing details about Far Cry 6. This video was brought to you by ExpressVPN. Right now, you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free when you sign up for a 12-month plan. Stick around till the end of the video for more details, or just click the link in the description below. But for now, let's get into it. Before I get into the details, I need to mention that with no actual gameplay footage of Far Cry 6 out in the wild, any gameplay footage you see in this video will be taken from Far Cry 5. With that out of the way, one interesting detail about Far Cry 6 involves how you'll see the main character, a freedom fighter named Danny, who by the way you can select as either male or female. While it's a safe bet that no actual gameplay will take place in the third person, we know there are cutscenes where you'll see Danny in the third person. As far as I know, that's a first for the Far Cry series, and it has several implications. First, these cinematics made it necessary for your character to be fully voiced. So Danny won't be a silent protagonist like we had in Far Cry 5. Also, because you'll often see your character, it sounds like Ubisoft has placed more of an emphasis on character customization. According to narrative director on Far Cry 6, Navid Kavari, quote, "We're going to be talking a lot more about customization and gameplay and weaponry and tools at a later date, but especially with the new third-person techniques that we're bringing on, you're going to get a chance to enjoy seeing your Danny." So maybe we'll get more options than we got in the pretty basic character customization screen in Far Cry 5. As I mentioned, you'll play either a man or a woman in Far Cry 6, who goes by the name of Danny Rojas. We don't know much about Danny's story, but one thing we do know that makes her unique to the Far Cry series is that she's local to the setting of the game. This will likely create a much different tone storytelling-wise than in previous Far Cry games, where the fear and shock associated with being a visitor in a foreign and hostile land has been a major focus. In Far Cry 6, your character will be familiar with not just the lay of the land, but also with the violence associated with being ruled by a tyrant. When it comes to gameplay, one question for me is, since Danny will know the island of Yara, will Far Cry 6 have a fog of war like we saw in Far Cry 5? I also wonder if anger, rather than fear, is what will motivate Danny. Did Anton Castillo's regime take something from her? Perhaps a friend or a family member? Will revenge fuel her drive to join the revolution? We'll have to wait and see. One big element of the story in Far Cry 6 is Danny's journey from regular island local to guerrilla army freedom fighter. And what does any guerrilla army need? Weapons. Problem is, on the remote, isolated, and impoverished island of Yara, where the game takes place, everyone has to make do with what they have, which isn't much. And from the screenshots we've seen, that means your weapons were likely built in somebody's garage. Here we see a rifle with a makeshift laser sight. And here we see some sort of launcher made almost entirely out of what appears to be a car muffler. And if you pre-order the game, you get access to the Discos Locos, a homemade gun that fires compact discs. Yep, that's a thing. Now, the big question is, do these weapons come as is, or will you be able to craft and mod them? The short answer is that we don't know, but when Kavari was asked directly in an interview with IGN whether weapon mods such as the laser sight are added by the player, he definitely left the door open. Quote, "The types of weapons and toys you're going to get to play with definitely have that sense of ingenuity and creativity that you kind of expect from a guerrilla movement. Even if these makeshift mods aren't added by the player, one thing is for sure. Your arsenal in Far Cry 6 will be among the most unique and unconventional we've seen in a Far Cry game. And that actually leads into my next point. The animals that you could recruit to fight alongside you in Far Cry 5, also known as Fangs for Hire, are back in Far Cry 6. But this time they're called Amigos for Hire, and the one that we know of looks more like a cutie than a killer. His name is Chorizo because, well, of course it is, and yes, he's on wheels. But he'll apparently have at least one deadly trick up his sleeve. In an interview posted directly to news.ubisoft.com, Cavari said, quote, "I can't wait for people to play with Chorizo. The tease for him is that he literally kills with kindness. That's all I'm going to say. I think he really kind of embodies Far Cry, you know, the fun and the joy and the little bit of terror that you get in a Far Cry game. My only guess is he might provide a distraction so you can then sneak up on enemies from behind, but I have a feeling Ubisoft has cooked up something far more devious." Okay, this one has gotten a lot of attention, so you probably already know this, but one of the biggest differences between Far Cry 6 and every other game in this series is the inclusion of a major city as one of the settings you'll get to explore. Sure, we've explored shanty towns and villages in past games, but never a full-on metropolis. The city is called Esperanza, and not only is it the capital of Yara, it's been cut off from the outside world for nearly 50 years. As such, you'll see lots of classic cars and other outdated technology around the city. But what's most exciting is how Esperanza gives the game a sense of verticality not seen in other Far Cry games. As quoted again on the Ubisoft blog, Cavari said, "The verticality is a complete game changer. Being able to run across rooftops, use back alleys, fight against some of the toughest opponents in the game in this setting, I think is really unique and fresh, and it completely changes the way the game feels. I personally hope the urban setting provides more stealth options as you take out enemies from the shadows." Also worth noting is that Cavari said you'll face some of the game's toughest opponents in Esperanza, implying that maybe this is where the game ends. And speaking of, having a city to explore is awesome, but it sounds like the story of Far Cry 6 will begin in and around the outskirts of the island, only to finish in the bustling capital, where it seems you'll stage a coup. As put by, you guessed it, Cavari, quote, "To have a revolution that begins in the farmlands, begins in the jungles, and having that ultimate goal of taking the capital city, which is so critical to any revolution, is really interesting. And when you walk into the city, it's an amazing feeling to feel the imposition and power of Anton's forces." From that quote, it definitely sounds like the early game will take place in a more natural and rural setting, with the final, more challenging missions taking place in the urban center. That said, Cavari did say that the story would allow you to explore the world from multiple angles. Quote, "It was important for us in terms of how you approach the story. If you want to start on one part of the island, or you want to start on the other side of the island, the story would adapt to how you approach it." While I haven't been able to find any official comment from Ubisoft on how co-op will work in Far Cry 6, the game is listed in the Ubisoft store as one of their co-op titles. Granted, the inclusion of co-op isn't a huge surprise, and it's likely that any multiplayer gameplay will look at least somewhat similar to what we saw in Far Cry 4 and 5. But still, if you're looking forward to teaming up with at least one friend, it's nice to know that Far Cry 6 will let you do just that. This is a short one, but since not every game is offering a free next-gen upgrade these days, it's worth a mention that Ubisoft has said on the official Far Cry 6 pre-order page that yes, Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions of the game will be upgradable to next-gen versions for free. So if you haven't been able to find a Series X or a PS5, you can go ahead and buy the last-gen version, then upgrade whenever you do get your hands on a next-gen console. Multiple endings aren't new to Far Cry, and in an interview with Hypebeast.com, actor Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Anton Castillo, made it sound like this game will also have multiple endings. Not only that, he made it sound like the fate of his character would be left up to you. He said that during his performance he was doing, quote, multiple takes for multiple different endgames, and that you can make a decision in regards to what happens to his character. It's definitely not concrete, but it seems like you might make at least one decision that affects what happens at the end. I'm going to get into a little bit of speculation here, but hear me out. First off, we know for sure that Anton's son, Diego, will play a major role in the story, and that he's being groomed to inherit his father's regime. In other words, Anton is trying to turn his son into a monster, even if he doesn't see it that way. It's also clear from the trailer that Diego is taken aback by the terrible things his father is expecting of him. Given that the devs have said this trailer takes place before the events of Far Cry 6, the natural question is, does Diego buy into his dad's philosophy, making him a villain? Or does he go against his father, turning him into an ally? If you ask me, the ultimate way to defeat Anton would be to turn his son against him, so I personally hope that Danny befriends or even rescues Diego from the clutches of his father. That said, with Far Cry villains being some of the most dangerous and deranged characters in all of video games, I can see Diego himself going completely off the rails and even surpassing his father in terms of pure psychotic rage. Heck, maybe Diego ends up killing his dad and becomes the main villain of the game. And speaking of villains, one thing I want to talk about are villains not just in video games, but in the real world. Unfortunately, hackers and data thieves exist, but thankfully, you don't need to worry about them if you use a VPN. And that's why I want to introduce a special offer from ExpressVPN. Right now, you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free when you sign up for a 12-month plan. Connecting to the internet through a VPN will shield you from hackers who could otherwise access your passwords, financial data, and emails. ExpressVPN can even keep your internet service provider from recording your browsing history or selling your data to pesky advertisers. Plus, ExpressVPN has been consistently rated by sites like TechRadar and IGN as the #1 VPN for gaming. That's because it lets you connect to servers in 94 countries, it gives you unlimited premium bandwidth, and it can reduce ping times and overall lag. And get this, with game prices often varying by region, connecting to servers in different countries can sometimes help find the lowest price on games. You can even watch movies and shows on Netflix that are only available in other countries. And if you're shopping, using a VPN is a great way to keep your credit card information safe and secure. I use ExpressVPN to protect myself online, and I was blown away by how easy it was. Once installed, you'll be connected in literally just a few clicks. And you can install ExpressVPN on up to 5 devices at once, so you can protect your entire home and your mobile devices for when you're out and about. As I mentioned, right now you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free when you sign up for a 12-month plan. Just visit expressvpn.com/questmode or click the link in the description below. That's expressvpn.com/questmode. Not only will you get peace of mind, but if you use that link, you'll help support my channel. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. And if you want more Quest Mode content, don't forget to subscribe. Lastly, if you want to keep up with me and see what I'm playing, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Quest Mode Games. Until next time, I want to remind everyone to never stop questing.